Hey guys, it's Matt Static, and you probably don't know this about me. It's something I try not to let show in my videos at all, but I'm a little bit of a gamer. I create these videos in part because I have an obsessive amount of admiration and respect and passion and love for these video games, but I'm not smart or talented enough to make them. And I'm betting most of you guys have that same level of love for these things if you're watching this. Unless you're just watching to support me, in which case, you're so cool, thank you. But like, how did we get here? Not to this specific video or channel with this goddamn algorithm, I will never know the answer to that. But how'd you personally get to this level of fixation on video games? Like honestly, everyone's a little indoctrinated into gaming at this point. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal or take anyone down a notch, but there's definitely a difference between people who passively enjoy games and people who have made gaming a personality trait. Like me. What I'm asking more specifically is, when did you start taking this shit too seriously? Now, the game I'm talking about today is about to be a lot of people's first experience with the franchise it's from, if it wasn't already. So, for a quick rundown, Metal Gear is a series of mostly strategical sneaky shooting story games started back in 1987 by Hideo Kojima and Konami Entertainment. They usually star a Kurt Russell-inspired super agent called Snake as he goes on top-secret excursions to destroy nuke-launching mecha robots called Metal Gears. Just about all but a few of them are critically acclaimed and beloved by fans, but the games with the word solid and a number in the title, those are the big ones. Each of the 5 main Metal Gear Solid games have pushed the entire industry forward on the storytelling, gameplay, or graphical fronts, usually all 3, not always though. Of these though, the third game, Snake Eater, is usually considered the very best of the series, and one of the very best of gaming in general. It's also considered the best starting point for new players of the franchise, which is something that will often have a sort of backhanded connotation to it, but not with this game. Compared to the others, something about the way Snake Eater did things just appealed to everybody. It's refreshing and nostalgic at the same time. Stealth was broader and denser at the same time. The story had serious, non-fictional elements, funny, goofy shit, and a powerful emotional through line at the same time. There was a monkey mode in the original version. This game is, by complete coincidence, about to turn 20 years old, which is a fact that makes me want to throw up, but also makes it amazing how well the game has stood the test of time. It is still one of the most definitive movie-esque games, may damn well be the definitive stealth game, and helped define what a video game even is to me. I did play Metal Gear Solid 2 first, but that game went a lot over my head, and I don't think it affected me the way it was supposed to. But Snake Eater is the one that did it for me for some reason. This was when video games started to mean a little bit more to me.
Commencing virtuous mission now.
The year is 1964, and the Cold War has the entire world in a chokehold. We start the game on the prologue Virtuous Mission, where Naked Snake is sent into the jungles of Soviet Russia to rescue Nikolai Sokolov, a defecting weapons scientist who's being forced to finish development of the Shadowhog. What is a Shadowhog? Why does that sound familiar? This is a prototype version for what would become the infamous Metal Gears. But the mission goes awry as the boss, a legendary soldier and Snake's mentor, defects from the United States along with her weirdo gang Cobra unit, allies herself with Soviet GRU Colonel Volgin, takes Sokolov back from Snake, beats his ass, and then throws him off a bridge. Worse than all of this though, is when Volgin decides to fire a nuke at his own country. American-made mini-nukes gifted to him by the boss. While Snake does survive the encounter, this is obviously a pretty bad situation. Unless something is done, it's going to lead to a nuclear third world war. To stop that from happening, Snake's gotta head back into the jungles, stop the Shagohod from being finished, kill Colonel Volgin, and prove America's innocence by killing the boss. And that's the gist of it. From there, it's a very similar routine to the rest of the games, though the new setting alone was ambitious enough. The team has stated that putting the world together for this game was the most challenging part of development. Building believable wilds required a variety of biomes that were abstract in size and structure, while also packing them with natural life. This was hard as shit to do on the PS2, but Snake Eater manages better than most other games back then that tried it. And it was well worth the effort too, because it's a big part in how this game moves the series forward. A big reason this is a perfect starting point for new fans is because it's that middle point for gameplay styles of the franchise. They're all similar at heart. Their objectives are mostly the same. Sneak through an area as best as possible to get where you need to go or do what you need to do, and if you get caught, you have plenty of options to fight your way through or disappear again and resume sneaking. But starting with Snake Eater, the Metal Gear Solid games would embrace more open-ended progression through levels, while previous titles were more linear and focused. With each of the environment's arrangements, along with many additions and upgrades to systems, you're allowed a lot more individual choice in getting through it all, while their detailed settings place new conditions and challenges on you. Man, the intrusive thoughts are fighting hard today. Oh, shit! I almost didn't even catch that. Ah! I am so sorry. Can I just lose the body? Darker areas will require some sort of light source. You'll have to use awkward terrain to hide in more open areas, and I really like the indoor sections. They're usually too tightly packed to just stealth through, so the game takes some cues from the Hitman series and makes you disguise yourself. Vital to pretty much most of these conditions is the new camouflage system, where you'll switch between Snake's outfits to best blend into the area, making it harder for enemies to see you. Since many of the areas can be so open, you'll find yourself hiding in plain sight a lot. Cool strategical edition? Yes. Cool customization edition? Even betterer. Because what's really important is that I can put Snake in this. Though some of the areas do have a lot of colors in them, so you can find yourself going back and forth between the game and the menu to change suits pretty often, which can get tedious. Otherwise, it's a brilliant system that extends the possibilities of what you can do. Just as brilliant is the CQC system, of course standing for Close Quarters Combat. It adds much missing intuitiveness to the punch and choke options you had before this, along with new stuff like interrogations. Getting up close and personal feels easier and more practical than ever, instead of a cool and useful thing you could do if you were good enough, which I usually wasn't. It's portrayed so seamlessly and satisfyingly here that I thought I could pull it off in real life, and because of that, I have never held a knife like a normal person again. All of these mechanics will become staples of the Metal Gear Solid games moving forward, but exclusive to Snake Eater are the survival mechanics. They've added the food, cure, and stamina systems to go along with your long-ass jungle adventure, and they're fun. Find wild animals so Snake can be an eater and do snake eating and not get hungry and start sucking. Also cure deep wounds, poisons, and boo-boos to make sure you heal as fast as possible. These are fun to play with since they encourage interacting with the wild, go along with the aesthetic of the game, and add a little extra layer to staying alive, but I wouldn't say it's super essential. I just spent a large amount of time a few months ago talking about tact and survival gameplay, and while the ones here aren't superfluous or intrusive, you've gotta be at a pretty high difficulty for this stuff to actually start mattering. Like as a kid, I was just randomly tapping all the options, and that usually worked, which means it definitely doesn't matter enough. Actually, if there is one thing I kinda wanna complain about, this game just feels a lot more exploitable than the others. I think they need new guard dogs or something, because these guys are not working out. Now trust me, I'm no speedrunner. I barely qualify as good, and I'm never getting those highest ranks. But even at my level, there are a lot of holes you can poke that don't feel intentional. Ow. 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 All these new features and updates are great and a necessary move, but they don't feel as suited to this game compared to the old systems. The two different camera modes are a perfect example, letting you switch between the typically overhead, sometimes fixed views set by the game, and the newer, fully controllable third-person view. While this addition is awesome and would become the standard moving forward, you can easily tell how much more comfortable the game is with that overhead view. Not only are guard routes and positioning more suited to you not being able to always see everything, but the environment benefits from it as well. Is it just me, or do the levels feel a lot smaller and inauthentic when in third person? The models look way too big, environments look more like sets, and it all kind of relied on the camera being set in a certain position to create that sense of scale. A lot of the time in 2 and 1, it felt like enemies and areas accounted for the game's weaknesses. Actually, in many scenarios, they straight up encourage you to take advantage of them. But since guards move more slowly and naturally here, and the scale of areas is so much more vast, they can't manage all of it as effectively. Don't worry, my guy. When you wake up, this is all going to be just a very confusing hangover. Overall, though, the inability to handle all of your cool new options is kind of just proof of all those cool new options. This game is loaded with a ridiculous amount of really hidden and obscure and weird ways to affect your game. Like hidden to the point that they feel more like Easter eggs, but abundant enough to feel like planned parts of your experience. enough so that players can usually stumble on them randomly or if they search a little bit. Maybe it's a hidden item or moment that's tucked away in a corner somewhere. Maybe you just do the right thing at the right time and something crazy happens. Or maybe testing out what Snake, his items, and his enemies are capable of will lead to a new discovery, because this series has a habit of having fundamental mechanics and gear becoming useful again in really out there ways.
I got it. That's better.
None of these are reliable enough for the game to have like realistic cause and effects to it. It's more so like, if you try out this stupid ass idea, it might work out. Gathering information from codex and guards, a well-placed shot, or blowing stuff up could very well lead to less dangerous enemies and scenarios. Of course, you can find extra weapons, equipment, and camo gear. Usefulness varies. I don't know if the healing radios actually even heal you, but I don't really care. I just like the music. Even the big moments, like bosses, will have fun ways you can affect them. One of them specifically has 3 different ways you can kill him. Fight him like you're supposed to. You can be an asshole and snipe at him earlier while he's just napping in his wheelchair. Or you can be genuinely evil and let him die from old age. If you get to the boss's arena, save your game, and not play for like a week, he'll just pass away, anxiously waiting to fight you, but never getting his chance. Now, that's fucked up. You don't even gotta wait a week, you can just fast forward your console's calendar and boot up the game. I'm not gonna lie, this is something I did every single time I played the game originally, because I hated sniper fights back then. But now that I've actually faced them properly, I kind of really hate myself for bitching out all those times. Metal Gear bosses are usually pretty mediocre in my opinion. There's like one really good one in each of the games, usually the big robot ones, with the rest being fine, I think. At least, I don't hate any of them anymore. Ocelot, the Pain, the Fear, Volgan, the Shadowhawk. Why do I keep doing that?
Not far enough, buddy. Ava!
They're all pretty inoffensive. I do really like the Fury though. The pitch black linear hallways and the Fury's very bright and painful flames leads to a lot of very visually striking moments and requires a lot of very quick stealth on your part. But listen, none of these have shit on the end. Most boss fights don't, honestly. You see, let me calm my shit for a second. A truly good boss fight should kind of define the whole point of gameplay in its game. It should incorporate everything the game has laid out up to that point, what you're able to do, what the game wants you to do, and the obstacles in the way of your choice. Then it should provide an ultimate test of your knowledge, your ability, and your focus, whether that be for a specific portion of the gameplay or the whole experience itself. 90% of bosses don't do that because admittedly, it's probably pretty hard to combine hours of gameplay and hundreds of options into one specific moment. So when creating the end, they just made the fight an hour fucking long and basically said do whatever you want. This is a slow, tension-filled test of your stealth abilities, as you have to stalk the end around 3 entire areas while this unrivaled sniper sets up his position, becomes one with the surrounding nature, and does the same to you. You will need to stay hidden in these overwhelmingly open and green settings and use your eyes, your ears, and metal gear to find out where he could be watching you from. You can just take your shot once you see him, but it's much smarter to be risky. Get in as close as possible, do the most damage you can, and then try to keep on his trail as he retreats, making it easier to find him again. It's a battle of endurance, as not only does this process take a while, but the end's bullets are specifically designed to drain your strength. So keeping yourself healthy and fed throughout the ordeal is just as important as anything. This boss fight captures the entire essence of what not just the gameplay, but the entirety of Snake Eater sets out to be. It's such a creative scenario that is understandably yet upsettingly rare. An experience like this is something only video games are really capable of, and understanding how to make the most of that is one of Snake Eater's greatest strengths.
Phrase.
Gotcha.
Where did you? I don't think so.
Fuck you mean I don't think so? Give me the camo. Yeah.
Here, take it and go.
Thank you, friend.
Now this might sound crazy with the series' reputation for very long moments of watching cutscenes and not playing, but once you really dig deep in, you realize that Metal Gear has always prioritized being a game first. Which is good, because I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that gameplay is generally the most important part of video games. Story, animation, music, etc., they're all important, but they're in addition to a playable experience. They can take over the show sometimes, sure, but at the end of the day, what makes a game is that ability to game. There's an artistry to it, and only once the gameplay is already great will Metal Gear let itself pretend to be a movie. You see, when I was first becoming a gamer, I heard a lot of people describe video games as interactive movies. It's an idea that most of the people around me were attached to. It's the easiest way to describe them, and so for a while, that's what they were to me. They're most similar in that both of them are visual and auditory presentations. A lot of what you need to make a movie exist, especially an animated one, is just as necessary for a game. With about 100-year difference between the two, the gaming medium has a lot it can still learn from movies. But I don't know, while describing games as interactive movies technically checks out, that kind of sells them short. Don't get me wrong, I love a good movie when my attention span will let me watch one, and neither is better than the other, if we're talking unbiasedly. It's just that the limitless potential within that interactive part is much more than a damn adjective. Games aren't a variety of movies. They're different forms of media. It's like calling movies digital picture books. All this might sound self-explanatory, but I have tried getting a lot of non-gamers into gaming. You'd be surprised how many people don't get this. That being said though, it's a very appealing tagline, and one that's responsible for getting many people on board to a life of having no life, which is why so many games coming out now are determined to replicate their features. Many AAA developers have made it their whole prerogative to create cinematic gaming experiences. Seems to be one of the only ways to get a lot of old heads and general audiences to pay attention to these things, and the numbers reflect that, as more movie-like seems to equal more money, and in many ways, Metal Gear Solid was the one that led games here. The reason the first game was so revolutionary was because it was the furthest step games ever took into being like films. An action-packed spy thriller stealth game with a narrative full of twists and turns, communicated through cinematic, meaningful, and lengthy cutscenes, and an extensive script with full-on voice acting performances for every single line, all at a consistently great quality, mind you, which was unheard of in '98. But as the potential of what games could present grew, so did the amount of work to put it all together. Like, I'm hyping up the series, and will continue to do so, but take note that Metal Gear has the amazing advantage of being old, so while Kojima and his team put in an insane amount of work on the presentation, it wasn't as much work as these newer games have to put in for the same thing. Today, developers will spend over half a decade's worth of time and money just to get the graphics, animations, and assets up to the hyper-realistic or hyper-stylized standards, which usually doesn't leave the luxury of the most innovation anywhere else. This has actually affected the entire medium, as outside of indies, gameplay across the board is sort of stagnated into broad combinations of everything, in order to give way to outstanding presentation. But I'm only bringing all of this up to really point out why Metal Gear Solid games have aged so incredibly. Films are embedded in the DNA of these games, as they are in Kojima himself, and even with all the innovation in gameplay I was just talking about, no title in the series is more inspired than Snake Eater. Now, Snake Eater takes place way further back in time compared to the others, so the vibe is drastically different. Metal Gear is a mostly futuristic styled series, and the other games in the franchise that focus on this time don't have the strongest sense of place. Like, they couldn't build the most atmosphere on the PSP for Portable Ops or Peace Walker, and I don't think Phantom Pain fully realized what it was trying to do, so every game there started with a P. So Snake Eater is the only one that feels like this. It may look like a huge step up from the last game, but if you look closely enough, you can actually tell they're built off the same technology, just with an abundance of detail and style put over it. It's very classy. Yes, a very classical feeling spy thriller, a la James Bond films of the time, and this may as well be an animated 007 film. It really accentuates that feeling of espionage and tactical espionage action. Fancy feelings for a fancy word. Metal Gear Solid 3 is just so unabashed about its movie influences, yet never derivative. It can be, because the series has always had this sort of dramatic, buffoonish, homosexualish charm to it that's unmistakable from anything else. The game is full of little references and nods everywhere, the color grading is trying to replicate the ones that older films were restricted to, but the area most inspired is probably the music. Ironic, since Snake Eater actually uses music a little bit less than the previous games, usually saving them for specific situations and letting the sounds of nature set the mood. But when the music does kick in, it sounds tense and action-packed like Metal Gear tracks usually do, but with a naturalistic overtone. They've got these flutes and drums playing alongside the alert theme that give it a wild and primal sense of urgency, but then they got like smooth jazz mixed in there, keeping it feeling sophisticated. You've got to respect all the obvious influence because it helps Snake Eater's presentation stand out in a way that reaches an entirely new audience. This isn't just many people's first Metal Gear, It's many people's only Metal Gear, and such a unique style is definitely a big reason why it reached a broader audience than the others. Shit, the music was the first thing that got me myself into this game. Now, I first got into Metal Gear because Snake was in Smash Bros. And stuck out like a sore thumb there, but I was more specifically interested in the fourth game with its fancy smashy graphics, the second game with the version of Snake from Smash Bros. Basically, and Peace Walker with its teen rating that made it much easier to actually convince my parents to get it for me. But when I first heard the opening theme, man, it changed me. I don't think you guys can understand how obsessed I became with this game entire months before I ever laid hands on it. I just think it's distinctly important how Snake Eater is able to make the most of itself as both a playable and watchable experience. And what's crazier is that I haven't even started talking about the best part of the game. Video game stories are weird. Stories are universal. Anyone can enjoy one and any medium can tell one because stories make up our very being. If you want to get philosophical for a sec, you're gonna have to find somewhere else because I'm not qualified to do that. It just gets kind of tricky for developers and writers to form a concrete narrative with games. A story tells you what happens, right? But a video game lets you happen. There really aren't two elements of a video game that get in each other's way like the story and gameplay can. A lot of the times they just ignore each other and do their own thing, and it's kind of just something you've got to entertain. A lot of other times, one element will end up prioritized over the other, so while one tends to be really good, the other can feel a little bit less impactful. Sometimes one will more flexibly to accompany the other, which is probably the best way to go about it, I think, but it's pretty difficult. Developers are still trying to figure out the best way to do that. None of these directions are a surefire success, and committing a game fully to one can be risky, so most games just tend to do a bit of all three. But with enough cutscenes to make an animated film, constant codec calls, and fourth wall breaks, the Metal Gear series, once again, does a great job in every direction. It's just so special and multi-talented and great, I love them. Though Sons of Liberty specifically went out of its way to link the narrative to the gameplay. I'm pretty sure the whole point of that one was to challenge the sense of control that gamers have while gaming, and while I think that was a resounding success, it didn't connect with everyone reasonably. And then here comes Snake Eater with another reason for being the best starter game. It's a prequel, chronologically the first story in the Metal Gear timeline, and at that it's relatively one of the simpler stories in the franchise, which it plays to its strengths. It takes a step back from the mind-bending mysteries and existential conspiracies to go for a sort of 1960s historical fiction approach. Most of the other games in the series also have real-life history and politics and shit playing to their stories, but more so in a way that uses it as like background context or big revelations for the situation, whereas with Snake Eater, it's at the forefront of its storytelling. It helps to ground a lot of what's here with a sense of reality, and also helps you to take it more seriously, which you're going to need help with. Remember that Metal Gear charm I was talking about earlier? It's in full force here.
I am the pain.
I think being away from the game for so long with those impactful moments sticking out so vividly in my memory really made me forget how fucking stupid this game is. This one scene specifically just brought it all rushing back to me. Ocelot is holding all the cards as he has Eva hostage and Snake at gunpoint, but Snake keeps his composure and takes this very appropriate opportunity to go over the specific details of Ocelot's gun and constructively criticize the flaws in the way he wields so that he can improve for next time. A next time he sure will come.
And you're forgetting one more very basic thing. You don't have what it takes to kill me.
Oh my god, he's so cool! Ocelot tries to prove he's a shit, but ends up proving he is shit. So Eva karate kicks him off the platform, ninja flips onto her bike, and then uses it to uppercut him and drive on his face. Snake continues his informative gun lecture, as Ocelot does his dumbass little gun twirl and point pose and vows they'll meet again, and then runs away in an extremely bitch-like manner. Eva's about to just fucking shoot him, but Snake's like, wait, no, this is prequel, he dies in the next game. So Eva motorcycle parkours up the factory and crashes through the gate. It's this sarcastic seriousness in the direction that you've gotta appreciate. Despite what I just showed you, that scene did not treat itself like a joke, at all. This game will look you straight in the face, tell you to be 200% serious, and then it's a delicate balance to strike, and Snake Eater just gets it. Most of the time. If there's one thing that does kind of get on my nerve about this story, it's some of the cutscenes actually. Everything in those scenes are solid, but characters and conversations can have some weird pacing to them, and it's mostly for the same reason. When you're watching a character in a scene, there usually is like unspoken dialogue hidden in their body language, their positioning, facial cues, mannerisms, etc. And Snake Eater has these. They're usually very quick, subtle, and natural, but with some stories, a lot of animation specifically, these cues can be a little more flamboyant. That's just something animation can get away with, and again, Snake Eater has these. But there are limits to it though. When characters pause for a few seconds in the middle of a conversation, use their entire body to communicate one very specific emotion, and sometimes followed it up with a very loud mouth noise, it can kind of kill the momentum of more serious moments, and Snake Eater has these. It's at its most distracting during some of the more layered scenes. Like, this is a story of espionage, where a lot of the time characters will need to keep their true goals and motives secret, and then do the least secretive thing possible, and everyone around them will just sort of ignore it. It doesn't happen the most often, but those few times make scenes very stagnated and awkward. But you know what? They're allowed to be awkward sometimes, because honestly, this is the best lineup of characters out of any of these games. And I'm not shitting on the other characters in the franchise, they're mostly all great, and sadly I'm not even saying that all the characters in this game remain great across the franchise. What I'm trying to get at is that there isn't another Metal Gear game story that has used all of its cast appropriately, where all of the characters in the story have just got it right. And I'm not even saying that I care about all of them, it's more that there's usually a few throwaways or overstays, or ones that require work on your part to care about. But without the need to spend most of the time elaborating on 20 different plot twists, this game's characters have much more room to develop than many of the others did, and the ones that really don't need to are appropriately sparse. Like our main guy, Naked Snake, aka Big Boss. This is a different character from Solid Snake, technically his dad, and the villain of the first two Metal Gear games. Well, technically only the second one. It doesn't really matter here, because for every other intent and purpose, from him looking identical to Snake, to his codename during the mission being Snake, to David Hayter reprising his role as Snake, this is Snake. I know I just pissed someone off. Yes, they're definitely different people with their own powerful character arcs, but after the backlash from not being Snake in Sons of Liberty, the devs probably intended for the players to feel like they were just playing as Snake again. I think what personally draws me to a lot of these stoic personalities are those little peeks into who they really are. Snake is mostly a serious and focused person, cold and cool, but every so often the mask will slip, and you'll get a glimpse at why he has it on in the first place. I just really like watching people come out of their shells. It's fun watching Snake get to geek out over what he really cares about, like guns, or fighting techniques, or food.
Okay, so how's it taste?
Very relatable. This is probably the goofiest Snake has ever been in one of these games, which, considering this game, is pretty appropriate.
Snake, what are you doing?
I'm in a box.
A cardboard box? Why are you...
I don't know, I was just looking at it, and suddenly I got this irresistible urge to get inside. No, not just an urge. More than that. It was my destiny to be here. In the box.
Destiny?
Yeah, and then when I put it on, I suddenly got this feeling of inner peace. I can't put it into words. I feel safe. Like this is where I was meant to be. Like I'd found the key to true happiness. Does any of that make sense?
Not even a little.
You should come inside the box. Then you'll know what I mean.
Man, I don't want to know what you mean.
Supporting him over comms and overseeing the mission is Major Zero. He's a likable enough personality, though honestly, he doesn't leave too much of an impression here. He doesn't have much personal involvement or relevance throughout the plot, besides telling you what you need to do. He's got a few very memorable conversations, but they're few and far between, so overall, he's alright. Though, please take note, I'm talking about your interactions with him here, specifically in this game, because context added later down the road makes this character's relevance a whole nother story. A very complicated, very aggravating story that I'm not talking about here. Along with him, there's Paramedic, the best codec pal in the series, and Sigan, who isn't far behind. Paramedic will give you advice on the surrounding nature, animals, and survival mechanics. She's also a movie nerd with a bunch of other weird interests, so calls with her tend to quickly go off topic. Sigyn is your tech geek, and will let you know about your weapons, equipment, camo, and other technology you encounter. Personality-wise, he's more of a straight man that plays off Paramedic's eccentricities and Snake's obsessively one-track mind. There really aren't any other characters in the series that just play around with each other like this, and they make for the best codec calls in all of these games.
Is there a way to take off my pants?
Say what?
My pants, can I?
Oh, hell no. This Fox unit is a nut fest.
Listen, I'm still not talking about it, but as far as my denial is concerned, the Patriots are only a metaphor for the collective human will. Sigyn is a completely separate black dude from the DARPA chief, and the paramedic retired and spends her time going to movies or something. I don't fucking know. Also in Snake's corner is Eva, a not fully trustworthy double, technically triple agent that's essential for Snake making it out alive. I'm not gonna lie, coming back to this game after so long, I was a little bit worried about her specifically. All I remembered about her character is that she was Snake's mom and was constantly stripping.
Oh shit, she's got the sideways grip like CJ. Gangster. Gangster.
Now, look, female characters in Metal Gear are weird, man. The ratio's all over the place. It depends which game we're talking about, and I'm not exactly the best person to get critical from that perspective. All I can say is that I was a little bit worried that their super on-the-nose femme fatale was gonna be at least a little bit embarrassing on revisit, but she's really not actually. Mostly. I still can't play this game around people. Eva is surprisingly well written. There's a lot of nuance in the way she perceives people, the world, and most importantly, her role in all of it. Since she plays at being a multitude of different roles, we get a unique perspective on one of the series' tried and true questions, a person's reason for fighting. And appropriately with her character, it all plays out subtly to make it all the more convincing. Subtly might sound a little weird with how in your face she can be, but hear me out. Even those parts ironically work. They're actually very funny. Like, she is trying so fucking hard to get his attention, and you know Snake, food or guns.
A ring hammer? The base of the trigger guard's been filed down for a higher grip. And not only that, nearly every part of this gun has been expertly crafted and customized.
She is just as goofy but helpful as anyone else here, and you can see why Snake starts warming up to her. It makes it so when Snake stops acting dense and shows actual fear and trust in people, when Eva stops teasing him and actually shows him care and gratitude. It works pretty good. Fuck all that bullshit though, cause y'all know what the real romance is! Alright, enough with his stupid ass friends though. The Cobra serve as the game's mandated superpower traumatized bosses, but for once I actually care about them. Representing the emotions that a soldier must face in war, they are strong supporting antagonists and complement the themes very well. Super pronounced personalities, supernatural abilities, and super strong metaphorical resonance, but without super long monologues and a super sad last minute backstory or death scene for some contrived emotion. It makes our short time with them appropriately noteworthy, and contributes a lot to the bigger picture. Then you've got Volgin, the militaristic lightning-infused Gru colonel that looks kinda dumb and incompetent by the end of the game. He's betrayed and outplayed by almost every major character surrounding him, but hey, he's got electric powers. You know, he beats the dog shit out of Snake that one time, and that other time he digs his fist through the Shadow Hog and controls it like a puppet. That was pretty metal. Gear. I called it the wrong damn thing. You know what? It's the Shadow Hog now. Even with all his losses, he makes up for it just by being cool. Ocelot. Now, he is the closest thing to the main antagonist of the entire series, and here we get to see his Peach Fuzz phase. We see the start of his shooting style, his sense of self, his obsessions and ideals, his uniqueness. Ocelot's the greatest character. I'm not explaining any further. Now, of course, I'm leaving someone out, and that's because I want to save it for last. I don't think any singular part of this game has had a bigger impact for me or many others than the ending and the main antagonist of this game, the boss. The whole game has built her up as this mysterious, tough as hell mother-like figure to Snake, whose tone of voice will always sound like she's reciting a poem for some reason.
What's it going to be? Loyalty to your country or loyalty to me?
I don't know why, but every time she talks after the betrayal, her delivery is like boisterous and dramatic. It's very entertaining, honestly.
There's no such thing as luck on the battlefield. And when he does, it will be the end for the boy. Light is but a farewell gift from the darkness to those on their way to die.
But for the final boss, you meet her in this majestic field of white flowers. Snake is usually steadfast in his mission, obsessively so, but there's been an air of hesitation whenever she gets brought up. She knows her student too well, and urges him to push past his feelings and get the job done. Basically forces him actually, since they've got like 10 minutes before they're bombed. Now the fight itself is pretty easy actually. They had a great setup and idea for her fight, but I don't know what you're supposed to do when she gets close to you to fight, and shooting at her from the border of the area while running into the field breaks her AI. If she could go prone and hide in the field, I think that would have gone a long way in making the fight better, but it's actually beating her and finding out later why she did all of this that really stays with you. Bro, she pulled off an Itachi before Itachi even officially did an Itachi, letting herself become an infamous war criminal to take the fall for her shitty ass government. The boss gave her entire being and devotion to her country and its fight, which is kind of the antithesis of what this series is usually preaching, but at this point you can't really do anything but respect it. Her resolve was in making a unified world, and she was more than willing to become a cog in the machine to make it any closer to happening. She may have been done dirty by the world, but the truth of her existence lies with the few that actually matter. Those that she knew, those that she taught, those that she fought alongside, and those that she loved. The field, the battle, that relationship between the boss and Snake, it all adds up to one of the most powerful segments in gaming, and it's because of that ability to communicate such an emotional message to everyone. You can be deep into the lore of the series, or more specifically studying the meta commentary. Maybe you're just focused on admiring the visuals and graphics. Maybe you've only been playing for the fun of sneaking and shooting, or maybe you're not playing at all and just randomly walking in on someone else. Regardless of how you're viewing the moment, it demands everyone's attention and delivers on it strongly. Like listen, I'm sitting here as a 9 or 10 year old, I don't even know what the word politics means yet, but I'm on like my third playthrough of this game. And then my siblings walk in. Usually, watching me play Metal Gear Solid back then was a very boring experience where I would sit in the same spot for like 5 minutes because I was too afraid of getting caught. And y'all know the curse of walk-ins. No one ever comes in during the cool part. It's either boring waiting, boring talking, or something that would get me in trouble. Granted, this is like an hour-long sequence, but what really surprised me was how I didn't have to force them or try to convince anyone to watch. They definitely didn't know what the hell was going on, yet I'll ask them all these years later and the moment still sticks vividly with them. This was proof enough to me that this was something else. Even though I still have the PS2 version of this game and a PS2 to play it on, it had been around a decade since I last sat down and played through it.
Oh, you know what? I've never actually used the human shield before. Huh? What the fuck? I have this on digital! This isn't supposed to happen anymore!
I don't even know why, because I went back through the others over the years, but it just never happened with Snake Eater. If I had to take a guess though, it's like I said, this is the one that stuck with me. Repeating a game was pretty rare for me back then, but I saw this through at least like 5 times before stopping. As I grew up, I revisited the others and gained a new perspective on them, like finding some magic in 2 I couldn't appreciate before, or some flaw in 4 that I passed by originally, or a way to actually manage and beat the first game because I got stuck on Vulcan Raven my first time around. But coming back to 3 after all this time, playing through it multiple times again, going through the footage, writing down this script, I'm surprised to find not much has really changed for me, at least with my overall feelings. You don't have to take some deep look at anything to feel something towards it, and pretty much all I knew back then was how the game made me feel. And more than 10 years later, I still feel the same. Storytelling is a pretty remarkable skill in my opinion, and it's the first one I ever really invested myself in. It was the first thing I ever really felt passionate about doing in school, so history and writing were sort of my thing. This all should have gotten me into books, especially with my mom trying everything in her power to get me into them, but I saw all those words and went like, movies should have also interested me more, but there was a sense of control that I was craving and they were lacking. I think that's why, in a subconscious sense, I gravitated towards gaming, especially open world ones. I was dropped into a scenario, and from there, I was in control of my adventure. Well, it was only with Snake Eater that I really put 2 and 2 together. Again, subconsciously, I was not thinking about this shit back then. That ending stayed on my mind for what felt like months, but was probably actually weeks, as I just really wanted to make something like that someday. I had played video games for a while up to this point, but there was always this part of me that accepted that they were pretty stupid. I was wasting my time and should be doing something better with it. And I'm not gonna lie, there's still a part of me that kind of feels that way. I could be doing so many things with my time, like being more sociable, building up a career. Kills me that I'm half Habesha and I don't know an ounce of Amharic. I could be learning that. But that drive I was talking about is something that has stayed with me up to this very moment as I talk into this mic at you. I figured that if I was going to waste my time doing anything, gaming wasn't the worst choice. Now, of course, the real reason I love this game so much is the monkey mode!
3, 2, 1, start!
Yay! That sound is so satisfying. Don't see me. Oh, wait. Damn, the analog sticks on this thing are not... How did he not see me? Hey! I see you. Oh, look at them partying around. Flashbang. Got you. Got you. Got you. Hey, we're not supposed to get up yet. Looks like someone has to learn the basics of CQC. Close quarters combat. Got you. Got you. Ow. Got you.
Now, there's an online portion to this game, the original Metal Gear Online, that I've never been able to try out. But from the footage I've seen of it, I would kill for the chance. Literally kill. Like, actually, if you have a way to play this game and coincidentally need someone killed, hit me up. My number's 202. Now, I think I had a pretty good ending there a minute ago, talking about my dreams and shit, and you might be wondering why I needed to include the stupid bit I just did. Honestly, I just don't want the main point of all of this to get completely lost. I know my more essay-formed videos can be a little uppity, and usually I'm fine with that. I'll get better at writing these as I move on. Even so, this one specifically comes off as especially pretentious. I don't know. I was just reading through it. I don't want to make clear that all this powerful story moments and intricate gameplay and overanalyze this and that is all in service to one main thing. It's a really fun game, guys. Metallic Gay Salad III Snake Beater is an important landmark title in gaming history and was very formative to me as a gamer. But above all else, it's a really fun game, one of my absolute favorites. And not just that, from all the deep looks and stupid jokes and boring editing I've had to do, I had fun making this video and getting my thoughts out. And hopefully, you guys maybe had fun watching it all. Thank you for that, by the way. Okay, I'm out.